You're set, sir.
Okay, we'll call the City of Olivet Planning Community Design Commission for November 3rd, 2022, to order. I would say, Madam Vice Chairman, would you mind calling the roll?
Hey, Secretary Jody Rich,
Absent.
Chairman Bob Durkee,
Present.
Vice Chairman Carol Wagoner, Member Richard Brophy,
Absent.
Member Daniel Rosenberg,
Present.
Member Brian Lewis,
Absent.
and Member Tim Spiegelway.
Present.
At Willow Farm.
Fantastic. Thank you. Let it also be known that City Council Liaison, Councilmember Missy Waldman is in attendance, as well as Carlos Trejo, Olivet's Planning Community Design Development Director, Don Doty, Senior Planner, and Bridget Waters, Administrative Assistant. Carlos, I'm not missing anybody who might be online, am I?
No, sir.
Okay. That being said, let's go over some procedures and commit discussion. So at the beginning of each meeting, we have time for public comments, and I'm directing it directly to you. So, and public comments are related for items that aren't on the agenda. And if you do, just raise, when we ask that, raise your hand, come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. If you don't have a comment, if you have a comment that's related to the particular agenda item, the procedures are when we get to that agenda item, staff will have a report. They'll go through the report. We'll have commission members will ask questions. Likely bring on the petitioner if there is one present, discuss that, and then take on public comments with each one. We do ask anybody who does come to the podium to state their name and address for the record, and also to limit the amount of time to no more than 3 minutes, just to be respectful for everybody's time and make sure everybody's opinions get heard. Okay, Carlos, did I miss anything?
No, sir. I think you had everything covered.
Good, good. So we'll move on to item number, well, I guess we'll do public comments. Do I hear any public comments from members of the audience?
And Chairman, I have nobody online.
Seeing none in the audience, we'll move on to item 3, which is demographic presentation. Dawn?
You should be.
Not yet, but I need to also bring it up. Didn't realize I was so early on the agenda. As Carlos just enjoys that.
Yep.
And I
So-
also, sorry, go ahead.
So Chairman, Ms. Doty is going to go through a presentation of the latest census data, both the 2020 census and ACS data, and kind of give you a picture overview so we know who we are as Olivet in there. I'd ask that we hold off to questions until she's completed the presentation. And then there's a couple of highlights just to kind of focus on and discussion. The goal here is, of course, just to inform the commission, answer some questions, but then we're getting the next phase of delving more deeper into the data and breaking it apart, and we'll be back to the commission with more information over time.
Great. Well,
Okay.
this is very exciting.
Sorry, and I'm having trouble actually getting on to,
Take your time.
okay, thank you. I'm not really pointing. A few of you have already heard this presentation, so I will try, make it brief. And as Carlos said, it is somewhat a work in progress. I've been able to take the time and refine all of the original data that's been presented, but break up the data and just separate it out so that it's clearer. All of the big graphics that were there are all now broken down. So this. Am I able to share yet?
You should be. Yeah, and I'm not sharing her.
It said host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, hold on one second. I thought it was. You try it. You're right. Miss.
All right, there we go. So, part of the reason why I mentioned that, it's not a change of the data, it does look different for people who have seen it already. But no, literally no data has changed. All of the sources have remained the same. The numbers are just bigger. I also added these handy dandy little arrows indicating the difference between the years. For population in general, we saw an increase in population overall and an increase in population density. I guess most notable or interesting fact about this slide is that there has been a decline in the median age, and that is converse to regional trends, and a 5% decline is rather significant. Looking at where that comes from, the new top age cohorts for 2020 are more on the parents and child spectrum, whereas in 2010, the top 3 age cohorts were professionals. And on the previous screen is where all those numbers are, but in the pie, it shows that distribution and how big of a chunk, as it's organized from greatest to least, how big of a chunk that 10 to 14 makes. And that was the principal gain. And the losses were in that professional range, or the professional age range. Now, if you break down by age, by sex.
What's the professional age range?
So sorry. That was just those, I guess I'm referring to that very generally, at the earning years. We're most prominent in the top earning years, like the 40s and 50, so like you see here, the 30, it's like 30 to 49, very solidly for 2010. And then we're still carrying, the early 30s and the late 40s, but that high upswing in the 10 to 14-year-olds has really thrown off our median age. And as we look at the breakdown of the same age cohorts and then by sex, you see exactly where those the growth came in, and there were a significant jump in males under the age of 5, which also brings down the median age for males. The median age for females is notably higher, and that would be because there is a concentration of females in the over 85 range. That it skews the data. You're thinking under 5 and then over 85, and you have those two relatively small percentages of your population. However, with our, if 7.7% of our male population is under the age of 5, that's
a lot.
It's significant. So it's going to bring down your median age, and no, we cannot rename it to Cougar Town. So that's my joke for the slide. So we have also your age dependency. So that under 5, over 85, right? Those are also age dependency ages. So there are so many articles that are out there about how the over or or like, I guess you could say the non-working years, the 65 plus are, or the percentage of 65 plus are outweighing the total percentage of people who are in their earning years, which is 16 to 65. I think in this specific graph, yeah, it's actually 15, or okay, so it's under 15 and over 65. It does exceed, it bucks the national trends, which what makes it significant. And although these are national trends, that age dependency, the retirement of the quote unquote boomers, you know, that has really been a national issue for a while. This looks specifically at that. That's right. All right, now population by race. I also promised I would be very quick. So this is kind of a new. I really had to dissect the race ish because as a census data point, it was problematic. The data from 2010 did not match the data from 2020. I had to pick through and where they add the Hispanic population is really what is confusing. So I have that, I have it broken out as it's provided, and as I could come up with the comparisons from year to year. They also break things out where it is one race or two or more races, three or more races. I'd like to take a deeper dive into it. However, I'm a little cognizant that it's a rabbit hole that can very easily be gone down, and how much do we really gain by getting that granular detail on race? You can see though that from the graph specifically that our, two largest cohorts for race besides white are Asian and African Americans. And those are, those are African or Black or African American has been steady throughout the years, but Asian has really taken a very large leap forward. If you look at, the next slide takes a very deep look at that, is what defines Asian and what defines Hispanic, and how those have changed, the concepts of that have changed. I thought it was very interesting, if not just noteworthy, that so many have changed the way that they identify. And if they are truly Chinese, or if they are, it just like, or where was that? The Hispanic, yeah, it was the Hispanic or Mexican. That was the most, like, where we had 93.3 identifying as Mexican in 2010. It's a significant drop to 13.1% from that. So is there something that is being done that is skewing that? Is there something that we can do to help that? That is entirely, up to consideration and for your consideration. It is notable from this slide that our population, the Asian Indian population, was our principal Asian minority for 2010, and now it has switched sharply to Chinese. But in a very large percentage of our population, which we already saw on the previous slide, a very small percentage is Hispanic. And Spanish used to be the principal concern of all, multilingual signage and things like that. But for our area specifically, we should look at more, language. So characteristics. This was a slide that needed to be split up because previously it was just so small. I also like the way it looked once I broke it out, because you can really see that a larger percentage feel that they speak, they speak English well. And it's not their first language, that they speak more than one language and they feel at least fairly confident. Is there something that we can do to bring back or bring up the 32.4%, since it is slightly down from the 2010? There are always going to be changes in the numbers, so slightly up or slightly down, I almost always within 10 to 15 points, I almost consider that just balancing. All right. However, that significant number of people who English is not their first language, almost 25% of our population 5 and over. And that is simply because people under 5 do not have a command of any language. So, and if you want to talk to my 7-year-old, they should probably put that age up. And to break down by age what the major other languages are, or the dominant languages are, if they are other than English. So you have a high percentage of the Asian Pacific language population that do not feel that they speak English very well. Or sorry, what was that? Here we go. This is simply the increase or decrease in the total population by age cohort, and then that I sectioned that out so you could look at the very well or less than very well. But again, we're not deep diving into these things. Language relates, of course, to nativity. A large percentage of our foreign-born population entered the area before 2010, and not a very high percentage. I'm sorry. A very high percentage of the foreign-born population has not naturalized. Is that something that we want to encourage? Is that it's certainly an interesting fact. It is also an interesting fact that, nearly 20% of our population is foreign born. They entered the country, more than 10 years ago, but it is still part of their history, and it is part of who they are. And so it's part of something that all of that is. Education. We have a high percentage of our population who are enrolled in school. And that has, it's been a significant increase, of course, with those increase in the age cohorts for 10 to 14. Under 5 is not a school age cohort, but we will see those children come up into the school system at some point. And the largest percentage of our population for school enrollment is in grades 1 through 8. Educational attainment, we are well educated. For those who, this is the population 25 and over. We are still very much a professionals environment. Whenever the professional as an age range, it was, strictly that wage earning age range. Professionals as an educational attainment, over 65% have their, a higher degree. And I thought I had another slide on education. There really should be another slide covered. I apologize. The labor force is very interesting. It's much more interesting than our educational attainment, which is a little plain. The employment for our region is, or the rate of employment or unemployment rate is usually what you hear and what is reported. We have a fairly low unemployment rate. It is, in comparison to the regions, it is up from, or sorry, it's down from 2010. This is also, pre-pandemic. All of the data that was collected and is displayed was collected between 2016, I believe, and 2014 and 2019. So because it's a 5-year estimate. So the pandemic, by the time that these numbers were being analyzed, the pandemic was not a thing. And so looking at, an unemployment rate that low at that time in history is very significant. Another significant fact is that such a high percentage of our parents, both parents in the family, are in the labor force. So with both parents working, that makes childcare, with that, besides having a significant percentage of the population, they have a higher need for childcare. We are truly in the center of it all, like that. Have a very low average time to work. We have a lot of people who drive by themselves to work. Are those things that we can impact, or is there ways that we can foster those alternative methods of transportation? Is that something we want to spend our time and energy on? The 19.9 minutes for travel time is what people generally associate St. Louis, a 20-minute city, and we can say that here, literally. There's that, should we highlight? You tend to get catty after that, a little while. All right, so industry, this would be a demonstration of the industries of our population. So this is where our citizens work, what industries they work in, and what does that tell us about our population? So the fact that we have, such a high percentage of our population that is in education, healthcare, and social assistance, seeing professional, scientific, and management, all of those things, those are top wage earning. Same thing with manufacturing. Those are people who live here, not businesses that are located. Population by occupation. What jobs do our citizens hold within their respective industries? Not surprising to see management and sales at the top. Got some great sales, right, Andy? And so the housing information, it's going to be very interesting how we can blend this data together with our county data and our municipal data. I'm really gonna just have the most fun getting to work with the Shockey consultants on how we can tell, the story with all of the data that we've gathered. I'm going to leave out every map that I've generated because this is a presentation on the demographics, and it gets very confusing when you start mixing in the different data from different data sources, because it tells similar stories that can be discombobulated. We have a really super low rental vacancy. And as I said, these numbers do not include anything from 2019 on. So none of the new multifamily units are in here. How will this look once those are finished? And that will make the next census so extremely exciting. The average household size, and this was where, you look at what defines a family and how narrow of a definition that is. There used to be a lot of assumptions about the renters or owners and the concept of a family. So, I would say it does not account for anything that's not a traditional mother, father. It is a non-family. So it's difficult to figure out how these actually balance out and where they come from. We have had a fairly sizable increase in our average household size. That means more families. Or more houses with more people in them. With the average position by householder, where we have a very high percentage of our population, or a higher percentage of our population that is older, it's not surprising to see that we have such a high percentage of total households with one or more people age 60 plus. Also 60, I feel like is very young. And it does not surprise me that 40% of our households have someone who's 60 plus. Also, though, slightly higher percentage have someone in the house, one or more, that is under the age of 18. So that age dependency ratio for both the old age and the underage, that's where those are still at a head. That's a lot. We're looking at that kind of battleground in a large percentage of our population. I am deconstructing this chart at the moment. But renter occupied units have increased. And we're not going to see that decline. There will be more stock. The rental rate, will be a flexible issue, but the amount of renter occupied units will climb. And I'm so sorry, this can really take, I've already talked for a half an hour. Yeah, okay. Well, this is a look at the median, mean, and non-traditional incomes. It has been heavily researched that a person who is earning their income as opposed to someone who is on a fixed income, whether or not that income they could make the same amount of money, but someone who is earning their income and is relying on earnings as opposed to somebody who has a fixed, like whether it's a stipend or something, it can be a larger amount, but they spend differently than somebody who is actively earning their money. We have a fairly high, household income. It is the non-traditional incomes that, how does that affect? We have, a lot of our residents that have non-traditional incomes. So how do we need to focus our services on still being accessible for those that can't be maybe as willy-nilly with their money? That's the broad overview of this slide. And then this looks at that lovely issue of inequality between males and females earning. We have a fairly high per capita income. It has climbed since 2010. It's a standout number. Whereas I don't feel like our median family income really speaks. The family the family income cohorts, I was very surprised, although maybe it's not surprising, that the highest percentage of our population, 22%, makes over $200,000. Very good for us. This is another slide that's going to be split up. And what it looks at mainly is that percentage of income as or the ratio of income to your household cost. And people are making a conscious decision. Whenever they buy their house, they are choosing, to spend a certain amount of money. So they are spending more of their money or a higher degree of their earnings to live here. And what does that mean for us? This looks at that percentage of income through the income brackets. And I mean, it would tell you the story, or it tells you the story that you would know, that people who make less spend a higher percentage of their income on housing cost. Disproportionately. But how does that affect us? What percentage of our population does that impact? How can we help them? What is there for us to do? Is that a way that we can move them? And whatever, I've been taking in so much good information, so many good ideas. It's just the last, the people that have seen this, and some of you have seen it multiple times. So any feedback, if there are numbers that you'd like to see, I've tried to incorporate as many as I could right away, but I feel like there's miles that could be gone on this. Break it up, but also I went on for a half an hour.
You did great. You did great. That is good.
Not, no.
Can we get a copy of it?
Yeah.
That would be
That'd be
fantastic.
great.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Dawn right now about this? Go ahead, Carol.
Don, if you're thinking about numbers to parse up, I love doing this, it's fun. But I think knowing a little bit more about our existing housing stock would be really valuable to the commission. How many single family, how many renters, owners, how old? Age of housing is a big one, of course. Size could even be.
So if you close your eyes for a second.
Right, something like that.
Here are the maps that I've removed, because it gets almost too granular for public. Missy's excited. Yes. And it is that now this is unit by square footage. Knowing the county's data on these things, I would consider a high margin of error. But it is interesting to see where the pockets are. There were surprisingly few without data. Parcels by tenure, not owner. We don't know also how accurate this information is, because we hear that it's probably not accurate. And having worked in the county GIS, it's just an assumption. However, your guys' eyes, your knowledge of the city to, to point out errors like these, I'm not sure that I can't change the county records. But I can change our knowledge of it. This is what research tells us. And, like any research, there's a certain margin of error. And it's not something that we've imputed, in order to get to that. So by year built, I thought this was fascinating, to see where all the really old places are.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So,
Probably
so
my favorite
the
map.
housing maps I'd love to study. Seriously.
As soon as I can.
Okay.
Assessed value. I like maps.
They're very helpful.
Absolutely. That's
These are
great.
single family. You can see that there are blank spots for certain new areas, new subdivisions that the county doesn't have that specific data on for the assessed value. And that's it. That's the super.
That's great.
That's terrific.
But it's not census data, so looking at it with the census data, it does get terribly confusing, to slide in those, this is us, because you're going from one level to another. And it's very difficult to weave it in together. But we'll have consultants to help us do that for the comprehensive plan, which is going to be phenomenal.
This is a great first start, great first month. And then so it's, yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Don.
thanks. Okay, so let's move on to new business. And Carlos, item A is comprehensive plan update.
Again, the commission issued a request for qualifications earlier this summer. We received to update the current 2006 comprehensive plan. In there, we received 6 proposals, including Vanderwall and Associates, who assisted us in preparing the original 2006 comprehensive plan. The I-5 Group, H3 Studios, Development Strategies, PGAV, and Shockey and Associates. All 6 well-qualified firms to consider. We were pretty fortunate. It was pretty exciting to be able to get that many for a response during the summer and such. So we did go through those, and ultimately through Donna and I in discussions with Ms. Sondag, selected 3 that we felt best represented and portrayed the request for qualifications that was issued by the city. And those 3 were Development Strategies, which has assisted the city numerous times in various developments, most recently, of course, with the Catalyst strategy for the Olive Boulevard corridor. PGAV, who the city has used several times for incentive analysis and development analysis. Olive Crossing was the most recent, and Shockey and Associates, who the city also used in its preparation for the master parks plan. And they're all 3 have a wide variety of different plans that have been conducted in the St. Louis region, both on the Illinois and Missouri sides. And there were 3 good firms. We took that to an advisory committee, which represented the 3 members of the Plan Commission, chairs of the Parks and Recreation Commission, Economic Development Commission, so eventually the Housing Authority. We just haven't gotten to that point yet. And then 5 resident members to participate, to assist staff and review the 3 RFQs that were forwarded to them. And those, again, were Development Strategies, PGAV, Shockey and Associates. Again, going back to the RFQ, our expectations on this were to solicit the services of a firm that really had a good handle and process for ensuring equitable composition of the comprehensive plan, that being not just individuals, but groups, associations, and such, to ensure that there was strong community involvement and engagement in there, that they had a knowledge of various sustainable principles, not just the ecological ones, but also about economic sustainability, or cultural sustainability, and things just beyond the broader environmental principles. And then that were good in terms of preparing visioning and goal setting procedures for the city to pursue. The advisory community again went through these. Essentially, there was two that dominated a majority of the discussion. That was development strategies and Shocking Associates. And they were neck to neck. And the end of the day, it was a consensus of the advisory committee to recommend to the commission here, Shocking Associates. And what I'm looking for is for our advisory members to provide some input in regards to Shockey or anything about the process with the other two consultants, and then to solicit a motion to forward a recommendation to the council for consideration of Shockey Associates. Began to answer any specific questions. I gave a good understanding or broad view of what was going on.
I think that was great, Carlos.
Right.
Carol, did you want to give a quick overview? I mean, I'd do it if you like, but
Sure, go ahead. I concur with Carlos in that any one of the three finalists really could have done the work and done a good job. There were some things about PJV's methodology that I personally wasn't too excited about.
shared by
and-
others.
I'm sorry,
It was shared by others.
it was shared by others. Yeah, then none of these thoughts were my own, really. And the discussion came down to really the two development strategies and Shockey. And we went back and forth and we were pretty divided. And it was a toss-up. We could have gone either way. And we ended up going with Shockey. And I think we'll make a good decision. Shockey is well-known for their community engagement and their innovativeness in that regard, and their ability to do all kinds of things that I, haven't necessarily seen other firms do. So I'm very comfortable with that decision and going that route. Community engagement is a huge part of doing the plan. It is above all, it's a policy document as our guide. And it's based in large part on what happens during the community engagement, and not only what happens during the exact time of the engagement, but I think it's important for us to focus in on how we keep those people engaged. Once they get engaged with the plan, we want to work with our consultant to make sure that those people just don't lose interest and go out about their lives. We want them to stay with us, right? My 2 cents. Do you have anything to add?
The only thing I was gonna add is, as part of this, Carol mentioned about the community engagement being, very important, but then the other part of the piece is kind of the planning and kind of creating the plan, that goes along with it. So, it's kind of, just to give you guys an overview, it all starts off first with community engagement and trying to get outreach from everybody that's involved. So it is going to be important for members of our commission to try to attend those meetings, try to encourage other people to attend those meetings. So we can make sure that we get as much input as possible. And if we can kind of lean on, everybody here, that would be extremely helpful. Because this is important for the city. This provides the direction, provides kind of the roadmap of where we want to go. And we've been doing great things out here. I mean, in this area, but it's pretty different, And so what we have to kind of listen to is how's the community reacting? Do they like it? Or do we have some sort of small faction that doesn't like it? And we need to kind of balance, what all those opinions are to kind of help direct us as to where we're gonna go forward. Exactly,
Right. Right.
exactly.
I think Don's data is interesting because it shows that there's a large piece of the population out there that we never see it. Commission meetings. How often do we see someone of Asian descent coming to the planning commission? But that's a big part of our population. And so we want to engage them in our planning process, and then we want to keep them engaged so that they too can sit up here at the planning commission.
They don't speak English as the primary language. How do we communicate with them?
Right.
About all the rules, the requirements, things like that. And I think it's an easy decision for them to kind of sit it out, but that's an important piece of the population that maybe we aren't listening to.
The other issue I want to bring up, because they are prominent in my subdivision and I communicate with them regularly, is that they correlate the ability to vote in America with, I can't vote in the subdivision. Yes, you can. That's a different vote. I can't participate because I'm not a US citizen. So there's that confusion. And I do want to share that with you as you move forward. I found that an aha wow moment for me. As I learned, as we would gather and have events with multiple Asian factions in our subdivision, they really had that mindset. I'm not a US citizen, I can't vote. So I really can't do anything other than live in my house, work, and do what I do. So that was an interesting, I didn't realize that. They're the ones that told me that.
That's very interesting. And just to let you guys know, just in case, I think it was mentioned before, but myself, Carol, and Brian Lewis are on this advisory committee with members of all these other commissions, and departments, as well as the members at large from the various community, locations, things like that. So what we'll try to do is kind of keep you updated as we go through this whole process. And I'm sure with each phase, there's like reports or documents or things like that. We'll have a presentation, probably for Carlos.
Well, and just to note on that aspect, the advisory committee is established to work for the plan commission for you guys in there. And the reason, numerically there was 3 is because then it creates quorum issues if we go beyond that. So we selected the chair, the vice chair, and the third senior member, which was Mr. Lewis, in there to represent that. And then again, the advisory committee would be coming back to the commission for as the plan develops. So this way, you guys can continue to spend your time doing the petition work that you're authorized, or also would be somewhat overwhelming in there. The other thing is that this is the commission's plan. This is the commission's long-range plan for land development, and to make sure that there's a distinction that it's a policy document that will assist us in identifying or the city's vision, establishing the city's priorities, and giving us guidance on how to tackle those issues, and provide some type of hierarchy, what we need to address first, as opposed to what is a zoning code, where a zoning code is I don't want to say it's the answer, but the plan is usually the broader general aspect. It's a question and how we should address that question, and then that comes back to the commission that essentially sets how we would schedule future work sessions, how we would continue to modify our codes, and look and assess and evaluate developments. So that there is that process in there. The council is involved solely because the council holds, for lack of a better word, they're the holders of the purse strings. So they would be, we have to make that request. The council has allocated funds for the preparation of the plan, but it's, the council has to authorize their release, and that's where we're at this point. If the commission as a whole is comfortable with the recommendation to Shaki, we'll take that to the council on Tuesday. A contract is put in place, and then we'll start the next phase of how this will be scheduled and assembled.
Carlos, do we need to vote on a recommendation?
I would request that, yes, I think it would be helpful.
So Carol and I have been directly involved. Do you guys have any questions about who we chose, how we chose? Final numbers are all gonna be negotiated with Barb to try to figure out,
What I can share in there, because this is a good question, but we went to the city council and we got allocated, I believe it's $250,000 for the preparation of the plan. That was split into two different fiscal budgets. And secondly, that second half is going to be allocated through the AP ARPA funds in there. So that's money the city is receiving from the federal government to utilize in the plan preparation. That's one of the things that qualify in there. When we go out to solicit professional services, architects, engineers, to some extent planners, state statutes prohibit us from setting or establishing like a monetary, to review them in terms of some type of monetary cost. Now, we can negotiate with them once they've been selected about that, and we can terminate that negotiation if we just either can't afford or find it unacceptable. But we can't go out and solicit like the lowest bid or things like that. And again, that applies to architects, engineers, to the extent the planners, and a couple other professional services.
And this is gonna go, it's the duration of this project for that is going to be about 12 to 14 months. Would you
Correct.
say?
Mhm.
Let's start with that. And one of the, from what we understand is the portion of the costs are associated with, having public outreach, coming up with sending it out to everybody, keeping them aware, having the public
think so.
forums, things like that.
Are they the ones that did the reviews planning?
I'm not familiar with Ladue School. I didn't see that in there, but they did do the city of Ladue. Now, they also provide, their public engagement services and could have been contracted by the school district or a consultant working for the school district in that.
Like for the public outreach and forums and.
We don't know yet. That's what we have is a general idea. But in terms of putting pen to paper, figuring out, well, let's do this in July or something.
Having some initial gathering, type of data, probably having a kickoff type of, meeting or, some kind of presentation to kind of try to get people engaged. But then there'll be lots of follow-up as we move from one phase to the next, so that people can kind of see the progress of this development.
It's approximately a year-long process,
The outreach or the whole thing?
the entire thing.
Outreach is typically in the beginning, but there'll be also times for kind of, so when we move from one phase to the next, to have kind of response or engagement. So to try to include that public engagement kind of throughout the whole process.
And there will be like a dedicated website for a certain time that will have information about it. Survey, oh yes, survey y'all.
More data.
So
Hard to-
nice. Yes.
That's right, that's
Got
right.
my hands in it.
Okay, so if there's no other further questions, do I hear a recommendation?
Oh, okay, I guess, Mr. Chairman, would you like for me to make a motion?
That would be great, girl. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that that we recommend as a commission to the council that we retain Chalky and Associates as our planning consultant to do our comprehensive plan.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And second. Carlos, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approved.
Commissioner Seaver, approved. Commissioner Wagner.
Approved.
Commissioner Drummond.
Approved.
The motion,
And again, we'll be taking the contract to the city council on Tuesday.
All right, good, good. So we'll move on to discussion items. Item A, Hilltop West redevelopment project.
One second. We, at our last work session, meeting, we talked about some of the changes that were occurring for the development there on Hilltop Drive on the south side, just north of Chevy's. And there, we had a conceptual development plan for an attached townhouse type of development. After some additional review by the developer, it became a more of a difficult challenge in there. Now, what causes that challenge is something to discuss in there, but we have a narrow strip of property that's going to be backing up to the Opus development in there. Opus had no interest in terms of trying to acquire the additional properties off of Hilltop. They were a different subdivision, and during that process, we had discussions about, what are we going to do with this remnant piece? We solicited one developer to take a look at the properties to see, but ultimately in the market, it doesn't seem or appear to be that it was feasible enough, and that could be for various reasons. One of the things we know is that the costs increase as the assemblage or the amount of properties get assembled because of the detention requirements through the Metropolitan Sewer District. Other things, of course, is it's a different economy now and different cost and there to try to make a project like this work. So the developer approached us about maybe going back and looking at the individual properties that were being looked at, and to do just a tear down an existing home and a new build. For the most part, that works pretty plainly without any consideration to what the zoning would be applicable in there, because it would be for single family use, which is what it's currently zoned. However, there is a section in our SR district, or single family district, that says that if you have a lot that is less than 50 feet, if you raise it, you can't rebuild. It places some limitations in the amount of improvements that you could do on that property. So essentially, a lot under 50 feet, if you're not maintaining it, or if it hits to a point where the habitation is minimal, you could run into the problem that you can't reinvest in the property or redo that property. It's my belief that when the initial ordinance was put together back in 1985, and that limitation of the 50 feet was put in place, is the sole purpose was to, if there were existing lots under 50 feet, was to encourage consolidation. So these properties would be acquired or merged together into one parcel. So you'd get, a two for, instead of two, you'd get one in there, and promote the larger lot sizes. It works well in certain parts of the Olivet boundaries, but in certain sections, it doesn't. It's not as equitable, and the costs just are not as feasible in the process. So we talked about, would the commission be willing to look at a reduction of that 50-foot minimum and bringing that down to 40? In that we, Don had prepared a map that identified properties that along the street edge would measure 40, less than 50 feet, but more than 40 feet. And that's what you see here in this map. What you'll see is that there's a lot of properties that are pie shaped along cul-de-sacs. Those all would meet the minimum area width and area requirements in there. It's just that along the street, they're pretty narrow, and that's because they're kind of pie shapes or they're triangular in the front. So there are not any issues with these properties. Somebody could, and many have, torn down and redeveloped homes that have been there. But you'll see a couple here down in Chevy Chase in here. And again, these are wedge properties, so they actually measure more than 50 feet, as you go, within the property, and they comply with the code requirements. But you'll see one here on Watsonia Avenue or Watsonia Drive. That's south of Logo School. And that is actually a 45-foot wide parcel in there. But right beside that parcel is a 5-foot, I guess, lack of a better description, some type of right of way. It's not an easement, but there's a 5-foot strip of land, but it's independent in there. All the other properties along here measure over 50 feet. The next concentration is right where the developer's at, and that's right there north of Chevy's in that hilltop area. In there, and the properties that he has under contract in here. So bear with me. Let me get that. Okay. So here's where Chevy's is. And the first 3 properties that the developer talked about at our last meeting are right here. And then we have a owner occupied parcel here that has seen some significant improvement. And then another property to the north of that parcel that the developer has under contract. Then the city actually relocated a property owner to this parcel here. The city actually created this parcel and relocated a property owner in there at a time when they were doing some street improvements down by the Public Works building. So we actually have a parcel here that's under 50 feet. I believe it's about 45 or 48 in there where the city, I'm not sure that the whole house was picked up and moved over, a new house was created in there. It's now under private hands. But those are really the 7, there's 7 parcels that exist that are less than 50 feet, but over 40 feet in width. And any consideration to change or modify the width, only, to the best of our knowledge, only those 7 would be impacted. You may see some other color, other items that are popping up in the maps, and those are actually either driveways that exist in here, and not necessarily individual lots of that nature. And they're essential for these larger lots to exist. So it's not like they can go away in that process. So what you have tonight is we looked at the ordinance, and the way the code reads under the SR district. Again, there is a section here that states that if you have a lot, a 50-foot lot that has 5,000 square feet, and it's a legal lot of record before February 23rd, 2016, you can redevelop that property. You can tear down the house and build a new house. What we're looking into, we want to have a good discussion with the commission, is what if that 50-foot width was modified and reduced to 40 feet? Still require the 5,000 square foot minimum, still require the minimum 100-foot depth, but only allow for a modification of that. It would provide an opportunity for those 7 lots that were identified to be redeveloped. What it will not do is permit any other future properties to be subdivided less than that. And there's 2 things in our primary residential district, which is the SR district. The minimum lot width is 100 feet. So when the subdivision at Birdie Lane was proposed, all those houses are 100 feet wide. They have a minimum 150-foot depth and a minimum of 15,000 square feet. So that anything that's new is created in there. However, there is a section in the code that allows what we call variation. So if you're within a subdivision in which there are smaller lot size than the 15,000 square feet, like a Chevy Chase, and you could subdivide a property so long as the average width and area equal or exceed the average width or area, or excuse me, so long as your width and area equal or exceed the average width and area within that subdivision boundary within 200 feet in there. And that's how you would see the subdivisions that took place at Dolores on Dolores Avenue in there, where the gentleman had two properties. One was pretty wide and looked like it was a consolidation, reverted them back to almost the original three that they had before. Those lots being reflected of the smaller lot sizes that were on Dolores. But what that section also says is that in no means can you have a lot that would be less than 60 feet in width. So again, this would not impact or permit any new properties being created. It would just allow that if there is an existing lot of record that is 40 feet or greater to have the opportunity to be torn down and redeveloped. Correct. Well, yeah, we would be bringing down the 50-foot minimum to a 40-foot minimum. Because okay. All right. But in no way would we permit lots less than 5,000 square feet. They'd still have to exceed that in there, and they'd still need a minimum depth of 100 feet. So in your packet of information, I drafted what the current code is, and then what this is, which you see right here with the yellow and the red highlights in there. But some things to consider about that process is, you know, I was hoping to get a little discussion that we don't, you know, the commission is not taking any action on this today. Is, you know, so what are the implications of reducing that 50 to 40 feet to the community as a whole? Well, to the best of our knowledge, it only will impact 7 properties. It will not allow the creation of any new properties to meet that threshold. Another thing is, you know, with a lot of that, you know, design and the dominance of the garage become important, and we want to make clear, you know, most new houses are going to have a 2-car wide garage. So within a lot that's 40 feet, over half that lot width is going to be dedicated to the garage. So you know, we want to make sure that we're cognizant that we're looking for, you know, houses that just don't look like, where the first floor don't look like the garage doors. You know, that the standard of design should be looked at more closely in there. And how do you do that? I don't know, because in theory, there's just not much space to really make it, you know, make the remaining portion of the house more pronounced, because it's not going to be as wide. It's probably going to be a front entry, a foyer, a corridor. So you get behind the garage and then the house opens up. But there may be other unique or architectural ways to be able to address those issues. What does this do regarding affordable and alternative housing? Allowing, you know, a rebuild of these houses is, you know, isn't going to necessarily make that you know, that these houses are now affordable. Affordable is a perspective. What's affordable to me may be different to what's affordable to you. So it's not about, you know, we're trying to make more affordable housing. This is going to be new housing, and it's probably going to be a market rate in there. But it does provide an alternative housing type and provide an opportunity to keep that margin a little bit lower than you would see in a larger lot. That being said, you know, the commission needs to be cognizant in this process, and it would probably come through as we go through the comprehensive planning processes. How does this impact, you know, that Hilltop Arrowhead neighborhood? Because that is probably the area in which our most affordable housing stock is as compared to the rest of the community. If we continue to through our ordinances encourage, you know, the raising of homes, the homes that's going to replace it is going to be more expensive. In there, whether you look at it as a gentrification or reinvestment, it's a whole different question, but it may lead that we need to reassess and look at our ordinances to see how we can make that existing housing stock more competitive with that housing market. And a lot of these homes in the Arrowhead area have single carports in there, and many of them are limited into enclosing or providing a 2-car garage because of setbacks. And it might be something that, and again, if our goal is to continue to have an affordable housing opportunity within all of that, that we may, as we look in this area, to see if our ordinance is actually kind of creating some of that obstacle or creating some of the development opportunities that developers are looking at to do those tear downs in there. And that's that. It's a good, what this ordinance does, it only applies to 7 properties. But it's part of that long-term vision and affordability question of what are our land use decisions doing. I'm open to other comments in there. I just wanted to make sure that those got out and were thought about by the commission as a whole.
Go ahead, Karen.
Carlos, when we're looking at what could go on those 7 properties, have we explored the idea of perhaps a new development coming in as a 0 lot line? And that uses different configuration, say with a muse. So that,
That's a good question. And that's what we kind of try to encourage the developer to take a look at in there, doing 0 lot lines or thinking of the density in different perspectives in there. And then that we look at how to make the zoning work in there. The end result was, the assemblage of property. And there was one of the obstacles. The other part is, the expectations on some of the costs limit that. And then as you assemble more property, other jurisdictions have other criteria that come into play, like MSD. Individual houses that are built in all of that are going to have to meet a stormwater standard and provide everything that we would require under Chapter 420. Excuse me, it's under the concept stormwater management plan and the stormwater ordinance in there regardless. But as you assemble more acreage, the Metropolitan Sewer District expands those on-site detentions. Doesn't necessarily mean that they do better detentions. This is an MSD looks at more of a communal detention for the development boundaries within itself. It's not like we get to
like what
resolve.
we did on Birdie Road.
Correct. In there. So I don't know if that kind of addresses your question. We did, that's where we started. We started at, can we do something different than single family homes here? And, and I'll let the developer speak to that. They took a look, they came back to the commission. They had a concept, but as they refined it, I think they found that there were more obstacles in that process.
Reducing the side yard setbacks to get that appearance of more density.
We talked about that of, maybe you have a 0 lot line on one side, or right now the setback.
Well, maybe not even 0, but maybe 5 feet.
Correct. Well, that any lot under 50 feet or 50 feet down would require a 5-foot side yard setback.
And then you get 5 on both sides, so then that's more like
They-
10 feet
correct.
between the houses.
And what that does is that becomes a way to avert a building code issue in which you have fire separation in there.
Okay.
Now, that's a whole different thing. That's not part of zoning. You can reduce, like one house has 5 feet, one house is on the property line. So you have a distance of 5 feet between the homes. And that triggers a requirement in the building code where you have to put a firewall. Outside of it being a cost issue, it's not it's possible. You can do it. And it's not it is a cost issue, but not an overwhelming cost issue. So that,
If I remember correctly, these proposed homes have side yards, 7 feet on each side.
I think that's where the original concept had a little bit more than what would have been required by code, just because they were just designed just for that
Yeah.
discussion.
Okay, okay. But I'm not sure how, if it makes sense to make them wider.
Mhm.
you know, so. Any other questions, or comments for Carlos? Daniel, I saw you're getting ready to start something, a comment. Were you or? maybe
No,
this is- Do we want to hear, public comments?
Yeah.
Since we don't really have a petition. Yeah.
Good evening. How are you guys? Andy Cohen, Kennerly Custom Homes, 15 Narragansett Drive. I first just wanted to say a special thank you to Dawn. That was, I'm kind of a numbers person, so that was really cool to get a chance to see that broken down. And I don't know if you took the census data and used any Olivet analysis, but that was really interesting. I mean, when it becomes quote unquote public, I'd love to be able to see more about it, but that was really cool. It was neat to see that almost 10% of the 10 to 14-year-olds, it increased 10%. It went up to almost 10% from 2010 to 2020. That's all middle school age kids. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out once they finish the middle school construction with that increase. So that was very cool. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Carlos did touch upon everyone, I think was here the last meeting, unfortunately, except for Miss Wagner was not. So if you would like, I'm happy to kind of go through where the process started over a year ago to where it is today.
Real quickly, if you could.
Sure. The biggest challenge was, as Carlos laid out, it's economic impactment is not the city or the commission's concern. There is an economic threshold that I was really struggling to get above with doing more of a multifamily development. It was at the point to where I couldn't acquire enough land to make it economically feasible. And as if I left it at the 1 or the 1.14 acre, it just was not achievable between the square footage of the land. There's a sanitary storm sewer that is going to service the Opus development that has to reach Hilltop. I tried a bazillion different ways and I told the rest of the commission members I failed in the process. It occurred to me throughout the assemblage process, the first 3 homes that are 40 feet wide. One of them has been vacant for over 10 years. And 2 of them are rental properties. And I thought it would be an opportunity for me to try to salvage something and offer 3 a little smaller, newer homes as you enter Hilltop, which is, arguably one of the first northeast public streets. Lois is right. The term affordability is fluid. But if I can offer a smaller home, it will allow me to build and sell a home at a lower price than what currently that I and my friendly competitors would be building. Carlos mentioned there's 7 lots. I guess you could argue it's even less than that. It's probably 5 because one of the owners on Hilltop, he's done a larger addition. I don't believe his home would ever be considered a tear down. And he's the only owner occupant actually of that block. And then the other one on Watsonia, given what they put into the property, I can't imagine it would ever be redeveloped, torn down again. So you're talking about 5 properties out of 3,300 in the city. It just seemed to be this was a practical, logical solution to offer some newer homes that have homes that unfortunately have fallen into disrepair with old stone leaky foundations. Prior to me coming along, I just wanted to try to make something work. I don't, as I've told the commission, I don't live in the city, but it's a really special place for me. Carlos has been great to work with, as well as all the members here. And I just really don't want to give up on letting the whole project go, and I'm just trying to come up with a workable solution. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
So I guess, so the solution that Carlos is offering, you think you can make work?
100%, definitely. Carlos and I even spoke about it today, and I don't want to delve into a design concern today, but the plan that I was trying to develop, those homes are 25 feet wide. If they go to the 30, which gives you the 5 feet side setbacks, it would allow me to sort of tuck back the garage more and give more of a little more front presentation of a front door and a little more house. There isn't a whole lot more house, but I agree with your and Carlos's concern that you don't want these homes that have these garages that are just stuck out there in the front. I don't like the look, and arguably it would be harder to sell because it may not give the right aesthetic. His solution, I mean, I told him that as soon as that's approved, I would certainly put it in for a building permit immediately. This is probably more within my wheelhouse. I'm more of a single family home developer. And I think there's a way to offer something that's a little smaller and less expensive, given what's going on in the market and in the real estate area as well.
Have any questions or comments?
So just to satisfy my own curiosity,
Sure.
did you explore things like zero lot line development or a
I-
similar type of row house for views kind of approach?
I did. Carlos politely pushed me in the direction of trying to come up with something on that 120 feet. And it was getting to the point to where the density of that, you weren't gaining enough if they were all attached. You had access issues with the driveways. You would lose all the street parking once you put those together in the front, and Hilltop as a public street. So that was the issue. And then to try to get the driveways in the rear, you would lose at least 20 to 22 feet to get back there. So then you'd lose a unit. So we kind of had this circular conversation every couple of days. I'd come in with a sketch for them, and it just, you couldn't get enough to fit. And I do recognize and appreciate the zero lot line suggestion. I think it's a good value added proposal for maybe a different development if I could utilize that on more frontage. But in this case, it just didn't quite get there.
Great.
Anything else? or-
No,
Okay.
anything else?
You guys are just very pro-development and forward-thinking. I'm not trying to brown nose, but it's just nice to try to come up with an out-of-the-box solution and to have the opportunity to present it. So thank you, and I will wait to hear next.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
So Carlos, we're not going to make any decisions on this, but I think it's moving in the right direction. I don't see any negative comments from the members of the commission right now. Carol, did you, since you're new to this,
No, I think Andy answered all of my questions.
Very good. Okay.
I did think so.
You did?
So we're only talking the south 3 lots, right? So what does this mean for the ones to the north? Because you had.
Yeah, there are 2 additional properties north of the first 3. One of those 2 is what Mr. Cohen was referred to, put a sizable addition already in there. And that was I think it's reasonable to say that was where it was difficult to meet that expectation of where that price point is.
Okay,
Uh,
okay.
because we're,
So that was for that one.
mhm. So the lot just north of that would benefit from the same opportunity if
Is this, okay.
if they chose to. Now, there's still the opportunity for them to reinvest in that structure and maintain that structure as an existing housing stock, but
If that were, but you'd have to change that in order for me to build, let's say, a detached garage, correct? Or
no, it would be, that would be permitted. Now, whether you'd have
Okay.
enough space to do that, that becomes the other issue.
very good point. And Daniel, one of the other things that I failed to mention, so the one owner occupant at 1131 Hilltop, he and his wife left to go out of town, but I met with them this past week to kind of give them an update, and they're supportive of the idea. Because again, it's directly adjacent to he and his wife's home, so I thought it was important to him, keep him on the loop.
Now, one thing I'll note, Mr. Rosenberg, is that, you have these three. The existing parcel here that's owner occupied, and then this parcel here that's under contract by the developer or under ownership by the developer. And then from that point on, the rest of the lots are 55 feet wide.
Currently don't know. Do you own any of the properties on the north side?
I have them under contract still.
Okay.
On the north side of the owner occupant house.
You have that one or all?
All of them up to the last two. The last two are the two that I was never able to.
So 5?
5 plus, so it would be 8.
Eight
Correct.
total. Okay,
Yes.
3 on the south
Five
side.
north
5
of
on
it.
the-
Yes.
So were you under contract with the one that was renovated?
Yes.
Okay, correct.
Yes.
I thought you said you weren't.
One that's owner occupied. Do you own that one?
No. I'm still the owner under contract. I do not own his house. He lives in the house.
But you have a contract with them.
Correct.
An
An
offer.
offer, correct, an agreed upon contract, but I wanted to go to, to he and his wife and say, here's where we are, here's where I am on this. This is what I think is going to be the best possible outcome with the, with the remaining parcels.
So what will the plan be for the remaining parcels?
My understanding is I asked him that, he's not sure if he wants to, he's got full-grown children. He's not sure if he wants to stay longer. He doesn't quite know what he wants to do at this point.
What about the 5 ones to the north?
I think it's actually the 3.
Oh, well, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Contract of understanding. Yeah, it's a contract.
So I think what everybody's getting at is if you get those all worked through and everything happens, what's the plan with those properties?
The plan is I was trying to address and deal with the first 3 first before I did anything else.
So if this happens with the 40 foot
Correct.
and you were able to do something with those first 3 on the south, what's going to be the plan for the houses on the north?
I would imagine, thank you, Carlos. I think the same issue still lies with if it were a redevelopment, a consolidation, you would have to certainly get the last 2, which have proven to be a challenge, or the other 5 would remain as existing homes or potentially a single family home replacement.
Are you looking to take ownership, complete ownership of those properties and redevelop?
On an individual basis or on a consolidation basis?
Either or.
I don't think the consolidation would work. As you know, my background is single family. I think that would be a great opportunity for me to do that.
stick with the single family. house.
I think so, because if I had the 9 and had the challenges that I couldn't make it work, I'm kind of going off the cuff here, but with 5, while those 5 are 4 or 50, I'm sorry, 4 or 50 and 1 is 40. I don't know what I could put there to still make it economically and get the density high enough to make it work.
You were looking at putting all the homes, were you looking at that whole entire street to do it all, and you said that you couldn't make it work? Or just those 3 homes?
I was looking at redeveloping all the 9 with.
All 9s, and you couldn't get the whole 9 to work.
Correct. And then once you include those last 2, you're going to be forced to have additional MSD, water quality treatment and stormwater detention issues. So then you're going to lose a unit or 2. So then you need to get even more, and then you'd be crossing over into Alice.
I know you probably looked into this, but I mean, were there alternate solutions that they would accept rather than just like eating up size?
You mean for MSD or? Not really. They're very cut and dry. I don't want to say I don't want to give the impression they don't care, but they're going to look at what the square footage of the land or what the acreage is that's being disturbed. And they're going to make their determination based on that, as opposed to what's there now. What I would do for them, it's just very cut and dry. And Carlos, you can maybe answer that maybe a little more eloquently, but
I mean, I was just wondering if there was any opportunity for them to be like, okay, we'll accept like an underwater or underground basin. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here.
And it's one of those things, and I can't speak on their behalf, but I think I understand on the question. And if I understood it when we talked, was that it becomes a cost.
Okay.
You know, if there was an opportunity to, and this is a weird conversation in terms of, here's the community saying, giving the developer, like, how much density do you need? You know, to make the numbers work, but the return is, I can't, I can't. So you kind of, you look at that, like, well, why not? I mean, in most places it would. It could be a couple of things. One is, it's a function of, you can make it work here with this assemblage, but it's very difficult to make it work here. In there, and whether, the decision of not pushing Opus to get the whole part of that, made this difficult. But I think, I'm still a strong supporter for the Opus development and what could happen here. In there, but it's not as as viable as I had initially thought, that we could assemble, put, some nice row houses, townhomes, or things like that. There's just not enough length, depth, and then to meet the other jurisdictional criteria, like putting storm drainage in there, that you just can't get enough densities.
Daniel, one of the challenges is, these are 125 feet deep. The city center townhomes across the street, those are about 180 feet deep. So, you've got almost, 60-ish feet to play around with density, stormwater, pervious versus impervious materials, to where I just don't have enough space to even if I stuck it underground, that's obviously, it becomes an area where you can't put, I would need that square footage to build something on it to make it get the density, but I couldn't, because you wouldn't be able to build on the detention area.
Okay.
I think that might help maybe answer it.
Yeah, so you'd be losing the lot size no matter what.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. In some fashion, you're exactly right.
There's always a way to do it. It's gonna be cost prohibitive in some form or fashion. There's a way to do what he's doing. It just eventually just becomes cost prohibitive.
For instance, Opus is doing a very, very large storage detention system underneath some of their parking that will have some pervious materials to compensate for that. But they've got 5 acres and 200 units that they can kind of spread that out Um, I don't have that opportunity. And Carol, I did talk to just, out of, I wanted to let you know, so as I was going through the process and I was coming near the end, I told the commission members that I did speak to other apartment developers, other more multifamily individuals, and they were having the same challenge of, it just wasn't enough square feet to put something on it. Even if it weren't my project, I did want to do a good effort to reach out to somebody that maybe could do something even more vertical. And they couldn't with the current space.
And just to add, maybe the aerial kind of helps. These homes here, that 1129, excuse me, 1139, 1143, 1147, 1151, which I believe you have under contract in
Yes.
here. There's no issues with there, whether they, if one of these houses were to be torn down, they just need to apply for, a new petition for a new single family home. There is also, these homes here, given their width, and this one here having a detached garage, they're a little bit more viable in the market than the ones down here on the south side. These three that are 40 feet wide, there just isn't that same type of opportunity because of the code. The other aspect of it is that the conditions of some of these here, especially this one at 1119, directly behind Chevy's, just got to a point of deterioration that I don't, it's not one that can get just rehabbed and then turned over. I'm not sure about 1123 and 1127, but again, they'd be, there's no garage to them.
The way they currently sit on the lot, and putting a garage would be challenging to do that.
Association?
Yes, I have. There's one person I stay in contact with, Betty Springfield. She oversees, is this Fairlight Downs, Carlos?
No, it's actually Fairlight Downs. This area here. And the developer has done a couple of homes within that area. On the west side of Hilltop, the first 4 homes are part of a subdivision, but a majority of it no longer exists. And then I believe the homes from this point forward, the 50-foot homes, not sure they were tied to, I believe they were tied to the ones here on Irvington and Rhine. I can't remember.
So the first 4 are their own subdivision?
To some extent of what's left of what was
Okay.
part of an original subdivision.
Well, Rob, what I did was reach out to who I thought was the most involved member of the general area. And they're supportive of the project too.
Very good. Very good. Carol? Any
Yeah.
thought?
No, my one thought is that one of the things I think we want to pay attention to, which I suspect you'll pay attention to, is the screening between the residential development and the Chevys in the parking lot. So that the noise and trash and so on will all be a concern. So I think we'll all want to pay close attention to that aspect of it. to
Yeah,
make sure
definitely,
that
there's-
residential's protected.
Correct. Yeah, there's a fair amount of overgrowth and an older fence and directly next to the left, to the south of 1119 Hilltop. I haven't reached out to the owner yet of Chevy's, but if I'm fortunate enough for you folks to move the process along, I would be happy to meet with them and figure out what alternatives we can do.
Carlos, do you need anything?
No, I think for the next step, I think the easiest way to address the developer's issue is through the code change that's before you. Which we have pretty well drafted. We'll bring it back at our next meeting to see if there's further discussions or if this ignites or any other questions or you think about it. And then we can decide in terms of what that next phase would be. I think it would be fair enough for the commission, just now that they've seen something, give you
Mhm.
some time to think it over, have another discussion, and then decide in December if it's a change you want to pursue.
Very good. And I think we'll all think about some of those topics to discuss. I'm not sure how to address some of them.
Yep.
And especially the long-term vision of that area. It's hard to say. Sure.
Appreciate your time tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for waiting. Let us go through everything beforehand. So appreciate it. Very good.
Good night, Andy.
All right. Okay, so we'll move on to other business. Item A, meeting minutes. I believe we all have a copy of the meeting minutes from August 4th, 2022.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Karen.
before we do that, don't we have a subdivision to look at?
Oh, yes, we do. Thank you. I appreciate that. 95, item B, 9549 Old Bonham Road subdivision.
And
Thank
it's-
you, Carol.
It's solely just for discussion. The commission saw this at their last meeting. I informed them that at the northeast corner of Old Bonham Road and Lynn Court, the existing house, somebody is looking at subdividing that, tearing down the existing house, subdividing it. Similar situation occurred across the street, if you recall. Douglas Properties had bought an existing house, tore it down and subdivided the property. And then there's 2 new homes now at that corner. So again, this is in that same area. In here, this lot's a little bit deeper. In there, they would subdivide the existing lot into 2 parcels. And then they put those 2 footprints that are there. I'm gonna go a little bit closer. I'm hoping it reads a little bit, it reads well. But some of the concern that was expressed by the commission, and this is just again for discussions, was how the character of Old Bonham Road has been changing with these subdivisions. The code permits these lot subdivisions, and we have a couple of, we still have a couple of lots that have an opportunity to be subdivided and meet the code restrictions. But based on Birdie Lane, Sleepy Hollow, and even the Lynn Court on the east side, the commission has heard, and the commission has also noted that as these homes kind of creep up closer to the street, it's changing the character or the presence of Old Bonham Road. So again, we went back and took a look at what is the setback line between some of the existing structures here at 9527, and then over here closer to the school, and it's approximately about a 50-foot setback. The code itself allows you to go down to 25 feet, and developers are taking are utilizing what the code permits. Question would be to the commission, and we can have the discussion with the developer for this lot subdivision. It would be 2 things. One is, should you want to direct staff to draft up an ordinance to increase the setback, front yard setback along Old Bonham Road in there, and that would kind of at least address, in there. But here you do have an active petition that's going through the preliminary review process. We have the ability to tell the developer that as part of this, that we want a greater setback. And we can justify it through the means of looking at the surroundings and how that would impact the character. Even though it's been done before, doesn't necessarily mean that these things carry any precedence or whatsoever. It makes it more difficult for us. But if the commission is willing to support that, we can tell them to that we would not permit a front yard setback less than 40 feet. Or so as part of that process along Old Bonham Road, that is. And you can look at the other aspects of it. Now, it does impact, this lot here and how that would be permitted, but there's approximately about 30 feet of setback from what they're proposing as a building footprint here on the north side to that property line. So, there's plenty of room to move that house footprint further north and away from Old Bonham Road. There's even more flexibility and more setback that the commission can gain if we looked at going now to the design. There's nothing wrong and there's nothing that prohibits a front entry garage if it's done correctly. A majority of that 30-foot setback is being taken up by the driveway and the driveway turnaround. If you were to drive in directly to the home, we would gain an additional 20 feet on that north side. Commission can state, that that's one of the standards, that it would be looking for as part of that planning process. The house to the north, it's an interior rectangular lot. I don't see any issues in there, but again, I think there's an opportunity to discuss with the developer to push this further inward, and that might essentially eliminate or limit the possibility of doing a side entry garage in that process, but I think that's okay. The code nor the guidelines say you can't do that. You just have to just do it in the right way.
I like the idea of pushing it back personally. And if we don't push it back, I think somehow we have to have something in the ordinance. Like what we did at Birdie Lane for that one that was up against Old Bonham, where we had more distinct features rather than just a regular side of a home. I do kind of, when I look at 9537, which is just to the east of it, and then think of somebody standing in their front yard looking at the backyard of that house, I gotta think that neighbor's gonna be not too happy about the situation.
Yep.
And that's what's kind of pushing me to move it back. But I am open for other thoughts too. Carol?
So my initial reaction is we made a very concerted effort with the Birdie Lane house to demonstrate some frontage on the Old Bonham side. So if we push this house back, we're gonna lose that. And the question, and so we'd be getting the side of the house instead. And I'm not sure that that's a good thing.
Why is it either or?
Well, because the house would be so far back from the street at that point, it kind of loses its street presence. And it's the way I'm thinking about it. So I'm not sure what the best thing as a matter of policy for the rest of Old Bonham Road, if we think about it, is really the best way to go here. I just don't know, but I think we have to, I'd think about it, right? I do think that the idea of having the street presence along Old Bonham is important. It's important to the kids that walk up and down. It's important to the community that our houses not be so isolated from the street. And Bonham gives us that chance to interact with the street very well, because we've got sidewalks on there now and new housing, and kids can walk up and down, and mom and dad can walk up and down, and so on. But I hate to lose that presence on the street. Yeah.
I think that it should be both. I mean, I think that you look at these houses and you go down, even the ones at like 9540, I'm pretty sure I know that one. And that one faces right at the road and looks nice facing at the road. And I think that's where it should face. And I think it should be set back where you have a nice front yard in the place and you're not right up against.
So you think it should be front facing towards Old Bonham?
And
But
yeah,
maybe have
but
a
push
side.
back, the setback, push back to 40, 50 feet.
And then have maybe a side entrance
Side entrance, right?
garage straight from the Lynn Court Street.
Mhm.
Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like that. Anything's better than the way they have the two garages facing each other right now. I said it last week, just say it again.
Right. Yeah. So what I'm curious about too is when we start thinking about this, as they're subdividing these larger lots, what will happen to the two ones to the east, 9537 and 9527? I
It
know
becomes a
there's
little bit more
pretty-
difficult because they can't subdivide solely on the purposes of Old Bottom Road.
Right,
But if they're willing to invest into a street, and there may be that opportunity, but then that becomes part of the cost, you know, placing the street, buying two properties, placing the street and that cost and how much in return would you get, how many houses would you get back in return?
right,
And how big those houses are.
Yeah. right.
I think what I would encourage the commission, now I'm gonna pull back here, apologize with the map. Is, one of the things would be, is looking at the corner lots. Because these are where the opportunities permit themselves because the infrastructure is already there. So the reason this lot is being looked at is the costly and difficult work is already done. The streets here, the streets here. That's what happened with these two here. What happens in this one here is that, you gotta purchase the two properties and then you have to construct a street. And if you only get 4 lots in return, do you break even?
Right.
In there. So I'm not, I am concerned, but I'm not as worried about these interiors, but I am a little worried about these corners. When we had, this house here right across from the school, this is the new house. In there, they just could not, they had Old Bonham Road here and Stony Lane. They could not make it work to get the 2 lots, and we ended up with that one house, and we were fortunate on that process. In there, this one just doesn't work either. This one's already been done. This used to be 1 lot. They were able to cut that and create the 2. But going down corner to corner, we have people already looking at. Let's see, there's a. Right here. Yeah,
See it on
you
the-
have
see it on the
three
map.
three possible streets. So really, the investment of the developer is pretty minimal because the street's already there.
Yeah.
In there. So it's kind of looking at those. So then how do you address that aspect and maintain, the unfortunately, well, you could see the setback here. But let me go to Sleepy Hollow and how these came here. If, in addition to that, if the city had an ordinance that said, hey, on Old Bottom Road, we're gonna be no less than 40 feet. That would have impacted how these houses would have been situated. It would have still allowed for the 3-lot subdivision of this original property. But these houses would have been shifted further back. The designs could have been completely different. A real creative one, I've always been impressed on, in there. It's not the, everybody's got a personal perspective on a home. I believe it's
9519?
the little narrow house. Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
it's this one here.
Yeah, I like that house a lot.
That they were able to, create a house that looks with the setback. As narrow as this lot is, but with the proper setback, it feels as part of the community, it feels as part of that corridor. Cause it kind of aligns itself with this neighborhood.
And it has tremendous street presence on
Mhm.
the old arms.
On both sides.
Right.
On both sides, and I think that's really kind of to have on some of those corner lots.
Mhm.
And what causes how did we get here? And there's nothing wrong with Long Acres. I'm not saying anything, but this, I believe they have a 25 or a 30-foot setback. It's compliant with code. The code allows them to do that. It may make sense in the interior of a subdivision or so, but along Old Bonham, when you have a corner lot, either there's 2 things. Either the commission can become more aggressive and just say no, Or it could be codified into a code that says no less than 40 feet, period. And then you don't have to engage in that discussion. Does that make sense?
It does, but I don't think it's, that 40 feet is gonna apply in all areas of the Bond Road. Or apply well, or work well. I think it works well in those areas where we already have the big properties. But some of these other areas where we already have these side properties, white rows.
Well, and we can look at what those setbacks are between here and here is different from between here and here. In there to take a look at to ensure, again, white roads, once you get into the subdivision, they have their own front yard setback established by their plat of record. Their plat of record may have not recognized Old Bottom Road, and in some cases it may have done so. In situations like here where we had the two long lots, there was no subdivision indenture to kind of limit the front yard setback.
I'd love to see a map that showed us what the impact.
We'll take a look at that.
on individual places, so we could get an idea. Where
We can get a pretty good estimate, and again, this would be solely an estimate of those that would be greater than 40, those that are less than 40. Where you could see which ones are significantly over and which ones are significantly back. As you get closer to that 40, let's say if this is 38 feet, that it will be difficult for us to get that exact measurement to say, no, this wouldn't be impacted, or to say, yes, this would be impacted. It also will narrow down which ones we also need to take a closer look at too. That'll be no problem.
Could we somehow, we had to push kind of hard for Birdie Lane to get that definition on the side. Could we set something up where if it's less than a certain setback, that they definitely have to have kind of the dual features on both sides? The front,
There's two means. We could put that within the guidelines, amend the guidelines to insert something of that nature that's applicable to any corner or specifically the Old Bottom Road. And then we can look at it in terms of a codified type of thing where it's not for negotiation. It's not where as a guideline, you can, well, in exchange for this, we'll be, here. Codification would be, it's yes or no. So we'll look at both.
And the question would be, do we do it across the city or just along Old Bottom Road?
I think the majority, what I've heard, and it may be because that's where the subdividings have been taking place, has been about the character of Old Bottom Road, not necessarily within the subdivision.
But it'll eventually affect corner lots all over the place. If it was,
Dependent how it's drafted, yes.
question at this point? And then let's kind of move on. We're getting late. It's 9 o'clock. Let's move on to other business. Item 7, item A is meeting minutes. And we have the meeting minutes for August 4th, 2022 in front of us, I believe.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
I'd like to acknowledge the receipt of the meeting minutes for August 4th, 2022.
Acknowledge. All right, we'll
Thank you.
move on to reports. Carlos.
Let me see what I have here. 1 second. I'll make sure I'll keep it quick. Coffee with the mayor scheduled next Wednesday, 8:45 a.m. Keisha Lee, the president of the Ladue School Board, will be the mayor's guest. So encourage everybody. Those are broadcast both online and in person. Offices will be closed on Friday, November 11th, in the observance of Veterans Day. And such. On November 19th at 6 o'clock at Stacy Park, they'll be hosting Stacy Starry Nights. Applications are now online beginning November 24th for 2 positions in the city council that are up for election. I believe that is Mayor Will and Councilman Carl would be up. Don't forget Turkey Trot, Thanksgiving morning, November 24th at 8 a.m. 100% of the proceeds go to the Harvey Kornblum Jewish Food Pantry. The 2023 animal registration applications will be online beginning in December. And of course, we are conducting the fall leaf schedule. It's always interesting when we do that. We've already fallen behind in the process, and only it was in regards to manpower by the contractor, but they're picking up pace in there. So in there. Park updates, everything continues. Again, the community center probably won't have an opening until about April in there, but I know most of the majority of the parks are open. There are still some construction areas, especially in Villa. Great River Greenway Centennial Trail, that momentum continues, especially between Dillman and Worson Road. But they're also in long range discussions about property acquisitions to connect up to I-170 between Dillman and Olive. Olive Crossing continues. I anticipate that we will be getting a petition application for the office structure next month, so it probably won't be till your January docket. And there, the main holdup right now, again, this was a tough side. We always knew it was a tough side. It's not as simple as what's going on at the other side of I-170. Some utility issues along the Olive Corridor and pole relocations. And until those are fully resolved, then will we see the road work commence along in there. You can see that they set back the fencing and all that, but again, there's still some issues that need to get corrected before any road work can start in there. Plant Haven Commercial Center. Occupancy has been granted to Plant Haven. That's the eastern portion. I think she's scheduled to open a little bit by Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving. That should be pretty exciting. The fencing has been going up and been put into place. They have a pretty neat Facebook page and website with information. And note, it won't be just the perennials and plantings, but they also have a gift shop, and they also do a lot of child and adult activities in their venue. Easy Storage, we're in the process of reviewing their building plans. So they're waiting our final reviews before those are issued, and then construction can commence on that side. That's all I have. If there's any questions, be glad to answer them. Yes. Was blowing, yeah. Yeah, we did talk to the contractors in there to see what we can try to do in there, and it was pretty windy today. Yep. No.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And today I told you I would have a little bit more to say than the appreciations I always say to you. As you know, I'm an executive board member of the St. Louis County Municipal League. And we have started our monthly membership meetings on September 22nd. One of our guest speaker was Carl Lumley and Ed Slews, the attorneys at the law firm of Curtis Hines, Garrett and O'Keefe, because there's numerous legal issues and legislation issues affecting local government, and I'll go over that in a minute. On October 27th, we had our second meeting at Sunset Hills, and the speaker at that event was What It Takes to Be a Smart City. Ms. Patty Zullo flew in from Los Angeles to present the Smart City Solution Spectrum. I thought that was very interesting. particularly since we're already beginning to deal with our data. Because what was really identified in that presentation was the fact that smart city solutions for cities really have to embrace networking, data. Did I say data? Uh, Connectivity and sensors for smart cities growth. And as I heard this presentation from this woman, and she says, you know, what are we doing with our data that we're collecting? How do we begin to look at a smart city? You know, what are your priorities? Let your priorities point the way. Partnerships are keys to smart cities. Smart cities are never done because you can build your, are never finished because you build upon each initiative. And we're kind of beginning to go down that road. And as council begins to look at green energy and carbon footprint and just beginning that kind of a conversation, it really kind of led to an interesting conversation there. So smart cities, I know we're seeing the commercials, and the Spectrum runs them, but it was an interesting presentation, so I wanted to kind of bring that forward. And with regards to some of the legal matters, I kind of want to focus on one because you're the Planning and Community Design Commission. So in 2022, the House Bill 1662, which provides that political subdivision shall not prohibit the operation of a no impact home-based business or require a person to apply for any permit or license to operate such a business. Furthermore, the zoning ordinances or regulations may not explicitly restrict or prohibit a particular occupation. This sets a dangerous precedent that may lead to a growing number of home-based businesses that could negatively impact the quality of life in residential areas. At this point in time, the St. Louis County Municipal League's policy, the league supports legislation to allow municipalities to license, tax, and regulate home-based businesses and to enact any such land use regulations that would preserve the residential character of neighborhoods that may be threatened by a proliferation of home-based businesses. In addition, the law should be amended to include a definition for those employees simply working from home as opposed to those operating a home-based business. That's a big issue to the municipal league. That is the second legislative priority issue of the municipal league for this year. First one being video services, telecommunications, and providers right of way. With the passage in 1996 of SB 1232, Telecommunications Act, Congress sought to establish a pro-competitive deregulatory framework. I won't go deeper into that details of this, but the league opposes any new federal and state legislation or regulations that would diminish the ability of local governments to manage the public right of way or to charge a fee or taxes to telecommunications and video service providers that use our public right of way. So there's this ongoing, of what state government is trying to kind of chip away from local government. Third priority, I won't go into great detail, but it is the sales taxes. Current statutes limit municipal sales taxes to specific uses and amounts. For most municipalities in St. Louis County, the maximum sales tax rate is 1.175. For those municipalities with fire departments, the maximum tax rate is 2.250. Statutes also allow for a public safety sales tax up to 0.5% for the cities of Eureka and Rock Hill. And in 2022, SB 759 was introduced, which would authorize any taxing jurisdiction to impose one or more sales taxes for the purposes of designating by the taxing jurisdiction, provided that the total combined rate of local sales tax imposed by a taxing entity that is a municipality shall not exceed 4.5%. The total combined rate of local sales tax imposed by a county shall not exceed 4.5%. And for all other taxing jurisdictions, the combined rate should not exceed 3.0%. We support this legislation that would simplify the sales tax statutes and allow municipalities the flexibility to designate sales tax uses subject to voter approval. That's a really good issue. Another one will be the Sunshine Law and closed records, and the final, another one will be sovereign immunity. And we've added a priority to support Land Missouri's efforts for the Rock Island Railroad Trail, similar to the Katy Trail. It supports development and it shows that we can be inclusive amongst all of our regions and around the state. So those are the important priorities, legislative priorities of the municipal league, St. Louis County, of which I help represent our wonderful city. And at this point, it's been 2 meetings, and I felt it was time to kind of let you guys know what's up there. Okay?
Very good.
And that's, pretty much it. Carlos went into the other things that are happening. Looking forward to the Turkey Track, seeing you all. And finally, I greatly appreciate you and thank you for everything you're doing. And I'm looking forward as we move forward with the comprehensive plan.
Sounds great. Anybody else? Any questions, comments? That being said, we'll adjourn at 9:13. Thanks.